Science has spoken. There is only 3% of Earth's land that is left untouched by humans. The vast majority of land on Earth no longer qualifies as ecologically intact, and over the last 500 years, too many species have been lost or reduced, as researchers report this last April 15 in the Journal of Frontiers in Forests and Global Change. Surprisingly, science also says that humans recognize happy screams faster than scared screams. The results add a confusing new layer to a long-held notion that our brains are wired to quickly recognize and respond to environmental cues, such as screams of fear, to help us survive. And if you think the era of post-apocalyptic zombie games is over, then think again. The Day Before is an upcoming open-world survival game coming soon from Russian developer FNTASTIC. Hello science fans and welcome to SHE-ensya's Corner. Here, we kick back, relax, and talk about science events that are exciting, scary, or fun in the life of your resident Filipino scientist. It's April 18, science fans. I am Shauna, your resident Filipina scientist, and welcome to episode 21 of SHE-ensya's Corner. So for this week in quarantine, we hear news of how widespread we, as humans, really are on planet Earth. We also realize the evolutionary importance of joy, and I think I found another reason to scare myself at night. The Serengeti looks largely like it did hundreds of years ago. Lions, hyenas, and other top predators still stalk herds of wildebeests. Overall, it is a prime example of what we call an ecologically intact ecosystem. It has large biodiversity, and it shows the complex tangle of relationships between living and non-living things, and it remains undiminished by humans. But such places are vanishingly rare. The vast majority of land on Earth, a staggering 97%, no longer qualifies as ecologically intact. Of the few fully intact ecosystems, only about 11% of them fall within protected areas. And within these pristine habitats, most of them are found in the northern latitudes of the planet, in boreal forests and tundras that have very low biodiversity in the first place. Now, what exactly constitutes a fully intact and functioning ecosystem is debated by ecologists, but the current data is based on habitats that retain the number of species at their natural abundance as of AD 1500. That's the baseline used by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature whenever they assess extinctions, despite the fact that we as humans have been altering ecosystems for thousands of years now. Large areas of land are necessary to support wide-ranging species, so the researchers initially considered only areas larger than 10,000 square kilometers. The team combined existing datasets on habitat intactness with 3 different assessments of where species have been lost, covering about 7,500 species. And while 28.4% of land areas larger than 10,000 square kilometers is relatively free from human disturbance, only 2.9% holds all the species it did 500 years ago. The study is a valuable first look of what the world was like 500 years ago, and it gives us something to aim for. Also pinpoints areas that are ripe for restoration and for repair, and it gives us an idea of how we can correct some of the mistakes that we've made. In other news, a new study suggests screams of joy appear to be easier for our brains to comprehend than screams of fear. This adds a confusing new layer to the long-held notion that a lot of our evolutionary instincts came from us protecting ourselves from danger. And so for the longest time, we thought that signs of danger would be easier to interpret than, let's say, signs of joy. The study looked at different scream types and how listeners perceive them. In other words, the team asked the participants to imagine that they were being attacked and to scream in fear, or to imagine that they've just won a lottery and to scream in joy. and the separate set of study participants were then tasked with classifying and distinguishing between the different scream types. And basically, it took longer for participants to recognize screams of fear or alarm compared to how fast they recognized screams of joy and elation. In another experiment, volunteers underwent functional magnetic resonance imaging or fMRI while listening to the screams. And joyful screams elicited greater response in the frontal and auditory portions of the brain compared to the screams of fear, although we don't really know why this is the case. The study basically shows that scream communication and the ways in which we understand that vocalization is diverse in humans, compared with other mammals whose screams are usually associated with alarming situations like danger.
Alan! 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 Ow! Alan!
It's actually quite a hopeful result that shows the power of joy in the human psyche compared to the power of fear. And now to zombies. The Day Before is an open-world, massively multiplayer, online survival game set in post-pandemic America, overrun by flesh-hungry infected and survivors killing each other for resources. You basically wake up alone in a world that you no longer remember and set out to find answers and the resources to survive. Based on the trailer, the game looks to be a mix between a third-person shooter with the stealth, scavenging, crafting, inventory management, and zombies in survival games like The Last of Us. Players will be able to arm themselves with an arsenal of realistic weapons that they can use to defend themselves against the infected and other survivors competing for resources. They will also be able to commandeer a variety of vehicles that they can use to quickly get around and explore the game's stunning post-apocalyptic environments. The game gives us a very stark what-if picture of how badly things can go if we don't do what's right in our current conditions. Now, the love-hate equation we share with zombies is an age-old affair, which is why they show up in all of our video games, TV series, and movies, and we are expected to beat the rotten brains out of them. It's not like they even scare us anymore. We've been desensitized because of their prevalence in media. But there is something about them being nearly human, but not quite human, that tips us over the edge and helps us view them as a threat. Apart from that, we humans are also built with an evolved process that gives us an instinctive disgust for corpses and decomposing things to avoid transfer of diseases. Instinctively, we draw out the humanness or well-being of an entity through its eyes. The more alive and lifelike it is, the more we empathize with it, even if it's a doll or an animal. But in the case of zombies, their dead, red, decomposing eyes gives us an idea of how unwell and unhuman the entity is. But why are we completely, irrevocably okay with killing our decaying fellow humans? We know that it's not really the zombie's fault that he's a zombie. He's undead, which sucks, but that's not the same as wanting to kill us on purpose. Now, is that? Research and history says that as humans, we have a tendency to not be bothered by the extermination of others who we see as completely different from us. Our refusal to see similarities or view them as something similar to us makes zombies or any other individual as fully able, makes it easier for us to want to destroy them. And there is also a sense of realism, rooted in old myths, that zombies represent the deepest, darkest corners of the human psyche. And zombie games and movies and TV series become an opportunity for those who still identify as humans to confront and destroy this dark nature. And in the end, if we triumph, it's a sign of hope that there is something beautiful, something worthy of saving that remains within us, despite being a society and a species that have done so much wrong. And so that's it for SHE-ensya's Corner this week. For more updates about the goings-on in SHE-ensya and your resident Filipina scientist, please follow SHE-ensya on Facebook and on Instagram. Drop by our website also at www.she-ensya.com. You can also follow my personal IG account at shona.abeledo. I hope you were able to enjoy and learn something from our short episode of She-ensya's Corner this week. If you did, I hope you can give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please don't hesitate to message me, your resident Filipina scientist, in the comments section below. Thank you very much, and see you around!
Steve!